So here's the thing. Captain Lysander Saul started, leaning against the bulkhead with all the grace of a man who'd long given up on grace. The Advent Horizon wasn't exactly a luxury liner, and its captain wore the ship's utilitarian charm like an old pair of boots, comfortable, but stained with more questionable fluids than he'd care to admit. "We've got a bit of a situation." Kayla Thorne looked up from her console, her expression a mix of curiosity and the kind of disdain that only a cryptologist could muster when someone interrupted her puzzle solving. Is it the kind of situation where we all die horribly, or the slightly less popular one where we just wish we had? Lysander grinned, the kind of grin that made people uneasy like a shark sizing up a buffet. "Oh, I'm sure you'll love it. We've stumbled upon a hyperspace rift. And guess what? The Xel'Naga are trying to erase us from history." "Ah, just another Tuesday then," Kayla said dryly, pushing her black-rimmed glasses up her nose. Her fingers danced over the holographic interface, summoning up streams of data and cryptic symbols. "What's their beef with us this time? Did someone forget to send them a Christmas card?" Lysander shrugged, the kind of shrug that said he'd seen too many things explode in his time to be surprised by anything anymore. "You know, aliens, always holding grudges over little things. Apparently, they've got this fancy new temporal tech. Temporal tech, huh? Well, there goes my weekend plans," Kayla muttered, her attention split between decoding alien gibberish and wondering if she'd ever get a vacation. "So, what's the play?" "The play," Lysander said, scratching his chin with the air of a man who might have a brilliant plan or absolutely none at all, "is to not die. And maybe, if we're feeling ambitious, stop them." Kayla snorted, a sound that was part amusement, part existential dread. "Right. No problem. I'll just rearrange the laws of physics on my lunch break." The Advent Horizon groaned ominously, a sound like a whale with indigestion as it drifted through the hyperspace rift. The view outside was a swirling miasma of unnatural colors, like a bad trip on an empty stomach. The ship was old, but it had heart, mostly because they couldn't afford a new one. "Captain," shouted a voice from the comms, crackling with the same urgency as a fire alarm that's just realized there's actually a fire. It was First Mate Jace Harper, the kind of guy who looked like he could bench press a small car but was more comfortable reciting poetry than throwing punches. "What's up, Jace?" Lysander replied, trying hard to sound more authoritative than the ship's PA system. "We've got a massive energy reading ahead. It's like nothing I've ever seen, or smelled, or wanted to see or smell. Great. Because what we need right now is more mystery," Lysander said, rolling his eyes. "Get us closer. Maybe it's a nice spot for a picnic." The ship rumbled again, not quite the reassuring purr of a well-oiled machine, but rather the reluctant chug of an ancient beast dragged from its slumber. Inside, the crew went about their tasks with the grim determination of people used to disasters. Kayla's console beeped, that obnoxious little noise no one had figured out how to disable, mostly because no one had survived trying to open the panel it was embedded in. "We're getting something. Coordinates, maybe, and, holy hell, a cloning facility. A big one, cloning facility," Lysander echoed, scratching his head. "Why the hell would they need that? Who knows? Maybe they're tired of swiping left on intergalactic Tinder," Kayla suggested. "Bottom line, they're up to something, and it's not to make friends." Lysander sighed, the kind of sigh that carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much and still had to deal with paperwork. "Guess we're gonna have to rain on their little parade." The bridge was a chaotic blend of blinking lights and humming consoles, each station manned by crew members who looked like they'd seen better days. But then again, those days were probably spent on planets where people didn't try to erase them from existence. "Captain," Jace's voice came again, this time laced with something that might have been excitement or impending doom. "We're getting closer. It's massive. Bigger than anything we've got on record." Lysander's mind raced, trying to keep up with the unfolding disaster. He was good at disasters, had a knack for turning them into something resembling success, Or at least survival, which in his book was about the same thing. All right, let's see what these bastards are up to. Kayla, keep cracking that code. Jace, get us in close, but not too close. I don't want to end up as space debris. The ship shuddered, groaning like an old man getting out of bed as it approached the coordinates. Outside, the hyperspace rift crackled with energy, a storm of madness that made reality itself seem like a poorly constructed set. "Captain, you should see this," Jace said, all mingling with disbelief as the view screen flickered to life, displaying the behemoth structure floating in the void. It was a fortress of metal and alien architecture, pulsating with a sickly green light that suggested it was either highly advanced or in dire need of a decorator. "Great," Lysander muttered. "A giant alien death factory. Just what I wanted for my birthday." Kayla's fingers flew over her console, her eyes sharp and focused despite the looming threat. "I'm getting closer to decrypting their plans. Give me a few more minutes, and we might know what kind of hell they're planning to unleash." "Take your time," Lysander replied sarcastically. "It's not like the fate of humanity hinges on this or anything." Inside the Advent Horizon, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, or at least a blunt spoon, and everyone felt the weight of the situation pressing down on them like a cosmic joke with a terrible punchline. "Okay, I've got something," Kayla announced, her voice barely masking her excitement. "They're using this facility to clone an army. Looks like they're planning to launch an assault across multiple timelines. Cloning an army. Across timelines." Lysander repeated, the absurdity of it hitting him like a slap to the face. "Just when you think they can't get any crazier, yeah. Well, alien megalomania isn't exactly known for its subtlety," Kayla replied, her tone dry as a desert sun. "We need to figure out how to shut it down before they do something irreparably stupid." Lysander nodded, a plan forming in his mind. A plan that, if he was being honest, had a slim chance of working. But it was better than none. "Right. We'll board the facility, find their control center, and blow it to hell." "Simple, simple," Kayla echoed, though her expression suggested she thought he might be a few screws short of a fully functioning brain. "And when that inevitably goes wrong, improvise," Lysander said with a shrug, the kind of shrug that spoke of many improvisations, some of which had ended with only minor explosions. The Advent Horizon maneuvered closer, preparing for what was either a daring infiltration or an ill-advised suicide mission. The crew braced themselves, each one knowing their lives depended on a plan as flimsy as Lysander's optimism. "All right, team," Lysander said, looking at his crew, his family. "We're going in hot. Let's show these Xel'Naga bastards what humanity's made of, poor decisions and caffeine," Kayla suggested. "Damn right," Lysander replied, a fierce grin on his face as they prepared for the impossible. As the ship approached the alien facility, the tension crackled like electricity in the air. They were on the brink of a battle that could decide the fate of humankind, and every one of them knew it. "Let's get this over with," Lysander said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "And maybe, just maybe, we'll live to regret it." With that, the Advent Horizon surged forward, plunging into the heart of the unknown, and the beginning of humanity's most desperate hour. The Advent Horizon closed in on the alien facility with all the subtlety of a drunk trying to sneak into a closed bar. Lysander Saul, captain of this fine bucket of bolts, stood at the helm, his posture a picture of confidence dashed with a hint of inevitable disaster. He turned to his crew, all wearing expressions ranging from grim determination to, "Why did I get out of bed today?" "All right, folks," he said, tapping the ship's controls like a conductor leading a funeral march. "Time to see what these Xel'Naga have cooked up. Hopefully not something that'll turn us into cosmic toast." Kayla Thorne, resident cryptologist and part-time cynic, glanced up from her console, her fingers still dancing over the keys. "I'm betting on something monumentally stupid. You know, like a giant erase humanity button." Their love for dramatic flair is unmatched. Just once, Jace Harper, the poet-turned-first mate, chimed in, I'd like to stumble upon aliens using their advanced tech for something like, I don't know, interstellar knitting. Maybe a bake sale. Don't hold your breath, Lysander said, unless you fancy asphyxiation by alien stupidity. The ship's relentless approach brought the facility into sharper focus. It was a sprawling mass of ominous architecture, a testament to the Xel'Naga's love for sharp angles and questionable color schemes. Glowing in that sickly green light, it looked like a haunted house designed by someone who hated life and just wanted everyone else to suffer. Captain, Kayla's voice cut through the murmur of the bridge, we're picking up multiple life signatures. And something else. Feels like someone's watching us. Great, Lysander muttered, because what this situation needed was a creepy voyeur vibe. He activated the ship's cloaking system, which was about as reliable as a politician's promise. Let's hope this piece of junk holds together long enough to keep us off their radar. The ship slipped closer, too close for comfort, yet not close enough to start triggering alarms. The facility loomed, a steel behemoth in the void, its purpose as mysterious as the aliens who built it. All right, crew, Lysander said, his tone that of a man preparing for his own funeral. We're going in. Keep your heads down, fingers crossed, and if all else fails, remember, no one can hear you scream in space. So let's try not to scream. The docking was surprisingly smooth, the ship latching onto the facility like a tick finding its new home. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the scent of recycled despair mixed with a dash of alien BO. Smells like a locker room for psychopaths, Jace remarked, wrinkling his nose. Could be worse, Kayla shot back. Could smell like Lysander's socks. Hey, those socks are a vintage collection, Lysander protested, leading the way down the corridor with the bravado of someone who'd forgotten to write a will. They moved through the dimly lit passages, the walls lined with alien script that Kayla periodically paused to examine. The floor was a blend of smooth metal and something that squelched unpleasantly underfoot, a detail that no one was keen to investigate further. Kayla, any idea what this place is supposed to be? Lysander asked as they rounded a corner, finding themselves in a vast chamber filled with ominously glowing pods. Looks like a cloning facility, all right, Kayla said, her eyes scanning the rows of pods. Each one held a figure, eerily human-like, floating in a murky solution that would probably earn a health violation in any civilization worth its salt. And by the looks of it, they're making us. Jace blurted out, incredulous. Why would they clone humans? Well, Kayla replied, I guess they are not satisfied with the current version. Maybe they're hoping the next model comes with better manners. Lysander shook his head, trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. They're creating human clones to replace us. Maybe rewrite history with their version of humanity. One that's compliant, subservient, less of a pain in the alien backside. A cold silence fell over the group, each member grasping the grim reality of their situation. The Xel'Naga weren't just trying to erase humanity, they were trying to rewrite it. All right, Lysander said, determination hardening his features. We've got two options. Sit here and criticize their interior decorating skills, or blow this place sky high. I vote for option 2, Kayla said, her voice a mix of sarcasm and resolve. They had their chance with the decor. The crew moved through the facility like ghosts, their presence slipping unnoticed through the corridors, or so they thought. Captain. Jace's voice echoed softly through the calm, his tone lacking its usual poetic cadence. We've got company. Lysander glanced at the security feeds, seeing sleek drones slipping out of hidden alcoves, their designs a marriage of elegance and lethal intent. Drones. And not the friendly delivery kind. Fantastic, Kayla muttered, pulling up her portable console. I'll try to keep them off us, maybe give them a taste of their own tech. The drones swarmed, the air alive with the hum of their motors. The crew ducked and weaved, returning fire with the precision of people who'd had their fair share of unwelcome parties. Jace, cover Kayla, Lysander ordered, firing at the nearest drone. I'll keep them busy. Let's make sure these tin cans have a bad day. Jace nodded, his movements fluid as he took up a defensive position, his shots ringing out with rhythmic precision. Nothing says welcome like a hail of bullets. The fight was intense, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning circuits. Kayla worked furiously, her fingers flying over her console trying to hack into the facility's systems to turn the drones against their masters. Come on, she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. I swear if I get through this I'm taking up knitting, or gardening, something that doesn't involve homicidal robots. With a final keystroke she broke through, a triumphant smile tugging at her lips. Gotcha. Let's see how they like playing tag with their own toys. The drones hesitated, then turned on each other, a mechanical mutiny sparked by Kayla's deft programming. The crew watched as the machines tore into one another, a ballet of destruction that ended with a final, explosive crescendo. Nice work, Lysander said, his voice carrying a note of genuine admiration. Remind me never to piss you off. Kayla shrugged, the hint of a smile on her lips. Don't worry, you're not on my list. Yet, the respite was short-lived as more drones activated, these smarter and faster, adjusting to the crew's tactics. The facility seemed determined to defend its secrets, and the Xelnaga's latest toys weren't going down without a fight. Kayla, any chance you can find us the control center? Lysander asked, fending off another wave of drones. I'm on it, she replied, diving back into the system, her focus unwavering. But you know if they catch us, I'm blaming you. Fair enough, Lysander grunted, reloading his weapon. I'll take the blame. But let's not give them the satisfaction, yeah. With Kayla's guidance, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the facility and the belly of the beast. The drones continued their relentless assault, but the crew pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose that outweighed the danger. They reached the control center, a cavernous room filled with alien tech and screens displaying a multitude of timelines and possible outcomes. It was a nerve center of chaos, the hub from which the Xelnaga planned to rewrite history. This is it, Lysander said, eyeing the room with a mixture of awe and repulsion. Let's blow this place back to whatever hellhole it came from. Kayla wasted no time, diving into the systems while Jace and Lysander held off the encroaching forces. The air crackled with tension and gunfire, the situation teetering on the brink of disaster. Almost there, Kayla called out, her voice tight with concentration. Just keep them off me a little longer. We're not going anywhere, Jace replied, his voice steady amidst the chaos. As Kayla worked, Lysander's mind raced, considering their options. They could destroy the facility, sure, but the Xelnaga would just build another. They needed something more, a way to stop this madness for good. If we rig it to explode, Kayla said, breaking into his thoughts, we can take out the whole facility. But that still leaves the Xelnaga's temporal tech intact. Right, Lysander said, an idea forming. What if we set this place to self-destruct and use their own tech against them? Send the signal back through time, make sure this facility never gets built. Kayla paused, considering the plan. Risky. The timelines could shift in unpredictable ways. We might erase ourselves, or worse than this. Jace interjected, gesturing to the chaos around them. I'll take my chances. With a final nod, Kayla set to work, her fingers flying over the controls with a precision born of desperation. The crew braced themselves, knowing they were gambling with lives and history in one reckless move. The facility began to tremble, the systems overloaded with Kayla's sabotage as alarms blared throughout the corridors. The drones faltered, their directives confused, and in that chaos, the crew slipped away, racing against the clock to escape the facility's impending doom. Let's get out of here, Lysander shouted, leading the charge back to the Advent horizon. I'd rather not be a footnote in someone else's history. They sprinted through the corridors, the facility collapsing around them in a symphony of destruction. Each step was a dance with death, but they reached the ship, diving inside as the airlock sealed behind them. Punch it, Jace. Lysander barked as they strapped in, the engines roaring to life with a defiant scream. The Advent horizon shot away, the facility imploding into a singularity of light and energy behind them. They watched as it collapsed, the Xel'Naga's plans disintegrating in a blaze of self-inflicted glory. "Did it work?" Jace asked, breathless as he slumped back in his seat. Kayla checked the readings, her expression unreadable as she sifted through the data. "I think so, the timelines are adjusting." "We might have just pulled it off." Lysander nodded, the weight of their gamble still heavy on his shoulders. "Well, let's hope this is one paradox that doesn't bite us back." The crew shared a weary laugh, the kind that came from dancing on the edge of oblivion and living to tell the tale. They'd done the impossible, and for now, that was enough. "Next time," Lysander said, his voice carrying a tinge of sardonic humor, "remind me to schedule something less suicidal." "Like a tax audit," Kayla chuckled, leaning back in her chair. "Deal. But only if you promise not to get us involved in any more time-traveling escapades." "Can't make any promises," Lysander replied with a grin. "But I'll try to keep the existential crises to a minimum." And with that, the Advent horizon drifted away, leaving behind a shattered facility and a future that was no longer written in stone. They'd bought humanity a fighting chance, and in the grim darkness of space, that counted for everything. "All right, let's see if we can reach Earth," Lysander Saul muttered, staring at the control console like it had personally offended him. He punched a few buttons, the holographic comm screen flickering to life with all the enthusiasm of a sloth on sedatives. "Come on, you piece of junk," he grumbled, smacking the panel for good measure. "You know, if violence was the answer, I'm pretty sure we'd have solved all our problems by now," Kayla remarked from across the bridge, not looking up from her own console. Her fingers were a blur over the keys, her eyes narrowed with a mix of focus and mild disdain. "Hey, I'm just following the universal law of electronics. When in doubt, hit it," Lysander replied, giving the panel another thump for good luck. "Besides, it's not like we've got anything better to do while we wait for the universe to implode." Jace Harper, lounging in the corner with a far-off look as if he was composing sonnets in his head, chimed in. "If the universe implodes, at least we won't have to worry about paying off the ship's mortgage." "Amen to that," Lysander snorted. With a final, reluctant beep, the comm screen steadied, only to display a sea of static that looked like abstract art trying to convey hopelessness. He squinted, adjusting the frequency. "Earth, this is Advent Horizon. Are you receiving?" "Over." The static crackled, obligingly providing as much clarity as a politician's promise. "Well, that's reassuring," Kayla said, sarcasm dripping from her words. "Who knew a hyperspace rift would mess with our comms?" "Next, you'll tell me water is wet." Always the optimist, Lysander shot back, rubbing his temples. "Any bright ideas, or should we just start riding our wills?" "Relax, Captain," Jace interjected. "If anyone's gonna kill us, it's us. Not some cosmic interference." "Good to know we're still our own worst enemies," Lysander replied dryly. Kayla's eyes flicked back to her screen, detection systems picking up something peculiar. "Hey, you ever wonder why the Xel'Naga are so obsessed with us? I mean, apart from our dazzling conversational skills, they probably got bored of existential staring contests with themselves," Jace suggested. "Needed some variety, or they've found a temporal flaw," Kayla said, her voice sobering as she decrypted the data streaming in. "Looks like they're using some kind of temporal manipulation to exploit weaknesses in our temporal signatures." "Great," Lysander replied, rolling his eyes. "So, what you're saying is, they've found a way to screw with time itself just to ruin our day, more or less," Kayla confirmed with a shrug. "Turns out human history is as stable as a drunk on ice." "Fantastic," Jace sighed, as if Mondays weren't bad enough. "Can we disrupt it?" Lysander asked, already mentally rifling through their options, which were about as numerous as a nun at a rock concert. "Working on it," Kayla replied, fingers flying over the console with a speed that suggested she'd been training for a typing Olympics. But it's gonna take some good old-fashioned human ingenuity and possibly pyrotechnics. I'm all for fireworks as long as we're not the ones burning, Lysander said, half-jokingly. So, what's the plan? 2 words. Temporal feedback, Kayla said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. We send a signal back along their temporal manipulations, basically using their own tech to give them a cosmic migraine. Isn't that risky? Jace asked, skeptical but intrigued. Oh, definitely, Kayla nodded. We could accidentally tie ourselves into a pretzel not in time. But hey, life's boring without a little risk, right? Right, Lysander said, nodding slowly. And what's the likelihood we fry their systems before ours? Oh, about 50-50, Kayla said casually, as if discussing weather forecasts. But I'd say it's better odds than trying to convince the Xel'Naga we're secretly their friends. That's reassuring, Jace muttered. It's like playing Russian roulette but with all the chambers loaded. Welcome to life on the Advent Horizon, Lysander chuckled. Always full of surprises and poor life choices. Meanwhile, Kayla had already thrown herself into the task, her focus now a laser beam as she recalibrated the ship systems. The air was thick with the anticipation of impending disaster, but somehow that was comforting in its own chaotic way. Got it, she announced triumphantly, looking up. Set to transmit a temporal feedback loop once we're in range. All right, let's make history, or unmake it, whatever works, Lysander said, a grin spreading across his face. Jace, you ready? Jace nodded, his usual humor replaced by a rare moment of seriousness. Ready as I'll ever be. Let's kick some alien ass. Here goes nothing, Lysander muttered under his breath, the ship's engines humming to life with a defiant growl as they aligned with the temporal signatures. The Advent Horizon hurtled forward, slicing through the void like a knife through particularly stubborn butter. The ship shuddered, the hyperspace rift pulling at its edges like the universe had decided to play tug-of-war. Hold it steady, Lysander shouted, knuckles white against the ship's controls. Do I look like a magician? Jace shot back, focusing on keeping them on course. This is more wing and a prayer territory. Kayla, meanwhile, was already in the thick of it, manipulating the ship systems as if she'd been born with a neural interface. Almost there, she murmured, eyes locked on the cascading data. Let's just hope the Xel'Naga aren't watching reruns when we hit them, Lysander quipped, tension knotting his shoulders. Or this might turn into a short trip, Jace added, his voice strained but defiant. The ship lurched, the pressure building as they neared the epicenter of the Xel'Naga's temporal meddling. Every system screamed in protest, alarms blaring in a cacophony of chaos. Now or never, Kayla yelled, slamming the final command. The ship released its payload of temporal feedback, the signal rippling outward in a wave of energy that cascaded through the Xel'Naga's machinations like a rock tossed into a pond. The world seemed to hold its breath, the Advent Horizon suspended in a moment of sheer uncertainty. And then, like a cosmic sigh, the pressure released, the ship jolting back into the familiar embrace of normal space. Well, Jace breathed, his voice shaky with adrenaline. Either we just pulled off the impossible, or we're about to experience the cosmic equivalent of a punch in the face. Kayla checked the readouts, her expression a mixture of disbelief and relief. Looks like we did it. The feedback loop disrupted their control. Timelines are stabilizing. Lysander said, trying to inject a bit of levity back into the situation. Nothing to it. Just another day at the office. Remind me to never let you schedule the team-building exercises, Kayla retorted with a smirk. Hey, you can't deny it's effective, Jace chuckled, visibly relaxing as the tension in the room dissipated. With the crisis averted for now at least, the Advent Horizon drifted in the quiet of space, the crew catching their breath amidst the aftermath of their mad gamble. So, what now? Jace asked, leaning back in his seat. Lysander shrugged, a grin tugging at his lips. We keep moving. After all, the universe isn't going to save itself. And watch out for hyperspace rifts next time, Kayla added, her tone teasing but with a hint of genuine advice. Time loops are hell on the circuitry. Duly noted, Lysander replied, steering them back into the unknown. Let's see what other mischief we can find. The Advent Horizon continued its voyage, a tiny vessel in the vastness of space, its crew united by their shared defiance in the face of the impossible. They knew more challenges lay ahead, but for now, they'd earned a moment to savor their victory. And if the universe had other plans, well, they'd deal with that when it came knocking. After all, this wasn't their first cosmic rodeo. The Advent Horizon had barely steadied its metaphorical legs when Kayla's console started blaring a noise that could only be described as a cross between an air raid siren and a cat in heat. Everyone's head snapped around as one, heartbeats quickening with the all-too-familiar thrill of impending doom. Lysander grimaced, his innate cynicism rising to meet whatever cosmic joke was about to unfold. "Tell me that's not another hyperspace rift," he said, his tone a blend of hope and resigned expectation. "Nope," Kayla replied, her eyes glued to the data pouring in. "Worse, Xel'Naga warship right on our tail. And by the looks of it, they are in a bad mood." "Sounds like a regular Tuesday," Jace deadpanned, though he was already moving to man his station with a swiftness that suggested he was less than jovial about the whole alien warship thing. "Well, there goes our celebration," Lysander muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Ideas, thoughts, Hail Mary passes." Kayla didn't miss a beat. "We've got two choices. We can either sit here and wait for them to paint the hull with our insides, or we can get creative and make their day as miserable as ours." Jace shrugged, a smile playing at his lips. "I vote for creative. Sitting around sounds a bit too much like dying." "All right then," Lysander said, with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for filing taxes. "What's the plan?" Kayla leaned back, crossing her arms with a calculating look. "We split up. Small team infiltrates the facility while the rest of us play distraction. Get inside, find out what they are so desperate to hide, and maybe throw a wrench in their plans." "Why do I get the feeling I'm not gonna like what we find?" Jace mused, already knowing his vote didn't matter much when survival involved jumping into the fire. "Because the universe is a fickle bitch," Kayla said, tapping away on her console. "And if that's their headquarters, then whatever they're hiding is likely to be juicy." "Juicy, huh?" Lysander echoed, smirking. "All that's missing is a good barbecue." They laid out the plan with the kind of hurried precision that comes when time is a luxury you don't have. Lysander would lead the infiltration team while Kayla and Jace stayed behind to keep the Advent Horizon flying and the Xel'Naga's laser beams at bay. "You get to play hero, Captain," Jace said, handing Lysander a small but potent plasma detonator. "Just make sure you blow up the right thing." "No promises," Lysander replied, slipping the device into his pocket. "I'll leave the comms open. Try not to crash the ship while I'm gone." Kayla snorted, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "You're assuming it'll get that far." True to the ship's unfortunate knack for attracting the universe's ire, the Xel'Naga didn't give them much time for goodbyes. Just as Lysander and his team were about to board the shuttle, an energy blast skittered past the hull, the ship vibrating with the Xel'Naga's displeasure. "Looks like our friends are eager to chat," Jace said, eyes glued to the viewfinder. Lysander gave a two-fingered salute before sealing the shuttle door behind him. "We'll send them our regards. Hold the fort." With that, the shuttle peeled away, dipping and weaving through the chaotic crossfire as it darted toward the alien facility. Lysander clung to the controls, his knuckles white with focus. "Anybody else love our chances?" he quipped, throwing a brief glance over his shoulder at the two crew members who'd drawn the short straws to join him. "If by love you mean accept with resigned dread, then yes," replied Hale, a wiry engineer with a penchant for dismantling things in record time. Beside him, Enya, a former navigator who'd seen more action than most veterans, was checking her weapon with the precision of someone who knew exactly how much was riding on its functionality. "I think I've been on worse field trips," she said, sounding almost optimistic. The facility loomed ahead, a menacing silhouette against the stars. It was a marvel of Xel'Naga architecture. If your idea of marveling included grimace-inducing angles and colors that seemed picked by a blind interior designer with a grudge against human retinas. "All right, folks, remember, quiet as mice," Lysander instructed as they neared a service hatch. If mice came armed with high explosives, with the finesse of a cat burglar, Hale worked his magic on the hatch, the lock yielding with an electronic sigh of defeat. "And we're in," he announced, as if this was a casual stroll through a particularly hostile park. The interior of the facility was a maze of shadowy corridors and ominous hums, the distant echo of alien machinery their constant companion. The trio moved quickly, sticking to the shadows like roaches in a landlord's basement, keenly aware that any misstep could end with them as so much space debris. They paused at a junction, consulting the rudimentary map Hale had cobbled together from intercepted transmissions. "Labs this way," he said, pointing a finger. "Because of course they'd keep their super-secret stuff in a place labeled lab," Enya said, shaking her head. "Subtle, these Xel'Naga. Let's just hope they put as much effort into guarding it as they did naming it," Lysander said, motioning them onward. The lab itself was an exercise in alien opulence, rows of flickering consoles and humming machines, all centered around a massive tank of luminescent liquid that dominated the room. And inside, the unmistakable shapes of humans, suspended as if caught mid-thought. "Well, that's not creepy at all," Hale said, eyes wide with equal parts fascination and horror. Enya was already moving to one of the consoles, her fingers darting over the controls. "Looks like we've just stumbled onto their cloning facility," she said, scanning the information. "And these aren't just any clones." "Recognize any of them?" Lysander squinted, the dim light throwing eerie shadows across the faces floating in the tank. "Is that Julius Caesar?" "Sure looks like it," Enya confirmed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "And over there, Cleopatra. Hell, they've even got Genghis Khan." "Guess the Xel'Naga wanted to throw a historical dinner party," Hale said, unable to contain his sarcasm. "Wonder what the table talk would be like." "Deadly," Lysander muttered, eyes narrowing with purpose. "We've got to destroy this. Can't have a bunch of historical figures running around causing chaos." "I dunno," Enya said with a wistful grin. "Might be fun to see them at a modern political rally." "Maybe," Lysander conceded. "But our job is to make sure they never get that chance." They worked quickly, setting charges around the lab with the precision of craftsmen and the urgency of people with a very pressing appointment elsewhere. Each beep of the timer was a countdown to liberation or obliteration, depending on how you looked at it. Back on the Advent horizon, Kayla and Jace were doing their level best to keep the Xel'Naga busy, the ship dancing through the stars in a deadly ballet. The warship prowled like a shark, relentless and unyielding. "Starting to think they might actually like us," Jace said, flicking switches with an almost lazy precision that belied the chaos outside. "They're sure persistent." Kayla didn't look up. "They probably just want to know where we got our dance moves." "Let's hope they don't get close enough to ask," Jace shot back, steering the ship through another barrage. As the minutes ticked by, Lysander and his team were making their exit, the facility rumbling ominously as if aware of its impending doom. They sprinted back to the shuttle, the weight of their discovery pressing down like gravity on steroids. "Time to go," Lysander urged, the hatch sealing behind them with a finality that spoke of no return. The shuttle shot out, the facility receding behind them like a bad memory. Lysander glanced back just in time to see the charges blow, the explosion consuming the facility with a fiery flourish that painted the stars with its death. "One less nightmare for the universe," Hale muttered, watching the spectacle fade. "Yeah, but plenty more where that came from," Lysander replied, plotting their course back to the Advent horizon. "Let's just hope we got them before they got us." They docked, the adrenaline of the mission still thrumming through their veins. Back on the bridge, Lysander joined Kayla and Jace, who were looking considerably less harried now that the Xel'Naga had suddenly lost interest and were retreating. Turns out blowing up their pet project was all the persuasion they needed, Jace said, grinning. Good to know they are attached to their clone army, Kayla added, her smile a touch wicked. That ought to keep them busy for a while. Lysander nodded, collapsing into his chair with a weary sigh. Well, gang, we've managed to piss off the galaxy's biggest bully. Again. What's next? How about we take a break from being the universe's most wanted? Jace suggested, leaning back in his seat with a contented sigh. Not a bad plan, Lysander admitted, though he knew deep down that their rest would be short-lived. Trouble had a way of finding them, and the Advent Horizon was nothing if not a magnet for disaster. Still, for the moment, the ship drifted peacefully through space, its crew savoring the brief reprieve from chaos and conflict. They'd uncovered an alien plot, thwarted a dire plan, and lived to tell the tale. All things considered, not a bad day at the office. The Advent Horizon had seen better days. Hell, better millennia, if you asked anyone on the crew. The ship had been patched up more times than a politician's campaign promises, yet here it was, still defying the odds. Which was good, because odds weren't exactly in their favor at the moment. Captain Lysander Saul was back in his chair, the faux leather squeaking in protest as he leaned back, staring up at the ceiling with the kind of resignation usually reserved for people being audited or attending a family reunion. The Xel'Naga were still out there, lurking like an ex-girlfriend who just can't take a hint. We're running out of thruster fuel, Jace announced, not bothering to mask the grim amusement in his voice. And if our cloaking system takes another hit, we might as well start painting targets on our backs. Great, Lysander muttered, rubbing his temples. Just what I like to hear first thing in the morning. It's actually closer to afternoon, Kayla chimed in, fingers flying over her console as if she was trying to coax a confession out of it. Not that time's relevant when you're about to be vaporized. Oh, wonderful, Lysander replied, his sarcasm as thick as his frustration. I'll pencil that in between panic and scream. Outside, the Xel'Naga warships prowled. Their patience, or lack thereof, was palpable even across the void of space. The ship's holographic comm screen greeted Lysander with nothing but static, resembling the kind of snowstorm you'd see on old Earth television sets right before the station went off-air. A fitting metaphor, really. Kayla's eyes darted over the streams of alien data she'd managed to intercept. If there was one thing the Xel'Naga loved more than their gaudy architecture, it was encrypting every message like it held the secret to the universe. Or, in this case, their next move. Any luck cracking that code, Kayla? Lysander asked, though he already knew the answer. If they had luck, it was the type that landed you in a ditch with a flat tire and no spare. Define luck, she replied, not even looking up. If you mean slowly unraveling the mysteries of the galaxy with bated breath, then yes. If you mean something useful, then no. Perfect, Jace said, reclining in his chair with a nonchalance that belied the chaos around them. So we're basically one step away from being cosmic roadkill, more like half a step, Lysander corrected, trying to ignore the ominous beeping from the console that wasn't exactly playing their theme song. Kayla, tell me we've got something. Anything, Kayla paused, eyes narrowing at a stream of alien hieroglyphs that flickered on her screen like a particularly condescending magic eye puzzle. I think I've figured out part of it, she said slowly, the gears in her mind turning with the speed of a caffeine-fueled hamster on a wheel. Do share with the class, Jace quipped, though his eyes showed a flicker of genuine hope. It's coordinates, Kayla said, her voice tinged with disbelief. A location outside the system. If I'm reading this right, it's some kind of rally point. Could be their main fleet or maybe a supply depot. Lysander leaned forward, interest piqued. A place they don't want us to find, bingo, Kayla confirmed. And if we can get there, we might just have a chance to turn the tables. Tables, huh? Jace mused, scratching his chin. Last time I turned the tables, they fell apart. IKEA quality, desperation makes for great carpenters, Lysander said, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. We've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Except our lives, Kayla pointed out, though her tone suggested she was already on board with their harebrained scheme. Details, Lysander replied with a wave of his hand. Jace, can we make it there with what we've got left? If by make it, you mean arrive in one piece, then maybe, Jace said, running quick calculations in his head. It's a long shot, but unless you've got a better idea, I'm all ears. Not at the moment, Lysander admitted, already feeling the familiar buzz of adrenaline coursing through his veins. Kayla, plot us a course. Jace, get us moving. And everyone, keep your fingers crossed. Or whatever it is they do for luck on your home planet. On it, Kayla said, her hands once again a blur over the console. Her eyes flitted over the map, plotting a path that could either lead them to salvation or straight into the jaws of whatever fresh hell the Xel'Naga had waiting for them. The Advent horizon groaned as it adjusted course, the engine sputtering to life with the enthusiasm of a hungover college student on a Monday morning. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past in a kaleidoscope of light, indifferent to the tiny ship and its even tinier crew. Jace hummed to himself, fingers dancing over the console with an ease that belied the severity of their situation. You know, he said conversationally, I'm really starting to miss the days when our biggest problem was running out of coffee. Those were the days, Lysander agreed, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. But let's face it, we'd probably screw that up too, true, Kayla added, not missing a beat. We'd end up with decaf and start a mutiny. The ship shuddered, as if protesting the very thought. They continued on in silence for a few tense moments, each person lost in their own thoughts of what lay ahead. Think the Xel'Naga will roll out the red carpet for us? Jace asked, breaking the silence. Probably more like a laser carpet, Lysander replied, eyes fixed on the path ahead. But that's a problem for future us. Future us can sue for emotional damages, Kayla said dryly. I'm sure we'll have plenty. As they drew closer to the coordinates, the tension in the cabin was palpable. The ship, despite its many flaws, seemed to sense the gravity of the situation and held together with a determination that might have been admirable if it weren't so damn necessary. There, Kayla said suddenly, pointing at the screen. We're here. The view outside the ship shifted, revealing an alien outpost nestled against the backdrop of a distant nebula. It was bigger than they'd expected, a sprawling array of ships and installations, all seemingly dormant. Well, this is cozy, Jace remarked, eyeing the outpost warily. Think they'd let us crash the party? Only one way to find out, Lysander said, moving his fingers over the controls with a steadiness that spoke of both desperation and determination. The Advent horizon approached the outpost with all the subtlety of a rampaging bull in a china shop, but somehow, they managed to slip through the outer defenses without triggering an alarm. Lysander could only assume the Xel'Naga were either supremely overconfident or supremely stupid. Both worked in their favor. Kayla was the first to notice a peculiar signal emanating from the outpost, an encrypted frequency, similar to the one she'd deciphered earlier. Looks like they're sending a message, she said, squinting at the display. Probably telling their buddies we're here. Let's make sure it's the last one they send, Lysander said, voice tinged with resolve. They landed the ship with a thud that echoed ominously through the hull, and before they could second-guess their decision, the trio was armed and ready, standing at the airlock like a bunch of misfit Avengers. Ready? Lysander asked, though it was more of a formality than anything else. Ready as we'll ever be, Kayla said, her weapon at the ready. Let's go remind them why humans got as far as we did, Jace added, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The airlock hissed open, and they spilled out into the alien facility, the harsh lighting casting strange shadows across their faces. The outpost was eerily silent, the only sound the echo of their footsteps as they moved with purpose through the corridor. They reached a central control room, a large chamber dominated by a series of alien consoles that hummed with the kind of energy that suggested they'd found exactly what they were looking for. Here we go, Kayla said, already moving to one of the consoles. Think you can shut it down? Lysander asked, hoping they weren't about to kick the hornet's nest. With a little luck, Kayla replied, fingers flying over the alien controls with an ease that spoke volumes of her determination. As she worked, the room seemed to come alive with a low hum, the consoles responding to her touch as if guided by some unseen hand. It was almost eerie in its simplicity, a puzzle that had taken her a lifetime to solve, now presenting its final piece. "Got it," Kayla exclaimed, triumph in her voice as the outpost systems began to shut down one by one. Lysander let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Nice work. Now, let's get the hell out of here before they figure out what we've done." Jace nodded, eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. "I'd rather not stick around for the after-party anyway." They retraced their steps, the corridors stretching ahead like a labyrinth of shadows and possibilities. The Advent horizon awaited them, a silent sentinel in the stars, ready to carry them away from the madness they'd stoked. As they boarded the ship, Lysander couldn't help but feel a surge of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Maybe they'd bought themselves some time, carved out a small victory in the vastness of space. "Think we'll catch a break now?" Jace asked as they settled into their seats, the ship powering up with a smoothness that defied its age. "Doubtful," Lysander replied, but his voice carried a note of optimism. "But at least we gave the Xel'Naga something to think about. Let's get out of here before they change their minds," Kayla said, her fingers once again a blur over the console. They engaged the engines, the Advent horizon surging forward with a renewed sense of purpose. As the stars streaked by and the outpost shrank into the distance, the crew shared a moment of camaraderie, a silent acknowledgement of their shared defiance against the odds. In that moment, surrounded by the infinite expanse of space, they were more than just a ragtag group of misfits in a battered ship. They were human, resilient, and unyielding in their quest for survival. And for now, that was enough. The Advent horizon rattled like the inside of a coffin during a rock concert. Lysander Saul, captain of this bucket of bolts, had never been one for metaphors, but the current situation seemed to warrant it. The ship was on the brink of falling apart, again, and the hyperspace rift loomed like a cosmic gash in the universe. It was the kind of view that would make even a seasoned nihilist like him pause and consider the meaning of life, or at least the meaning of the next 5 minutes. "Kayla, how's that brilliant sabotage plan coming along?" Lysander called over his shoulder, keeping one eye on the console that seemed to be displaying more error messages than a teenager's social media inbox. Kayla Thorne, resident cryptologist and keeper of sarcastic wisdom, didn't look up from her console. "Working on it, Captain. Just trying to make sure we don't end up erasing ourselves from history in the process. Though given our luck, that might be an improvement." "Cynical as always, Kayla. I appreciate it." "Nothing like a dose of grim reality to keep the blood pressure up," Lysander replied, his fingers dancing over the ship's controls like a pianist trying to coax music from a drunkard's piano. Jace Harper, their perpetually relaxed engineer, leaned back in his chair, feet up on the console in a display of casual disregard for anything resembling protocol. "You know, for a race that loves drama, the Xel'Naga sure know how to make a mess of things. Even their architecture looks like it's designed to give you a headache. Or maybe their goal is to make us feel inadequate," Kayla interjected, her hands never slowing as she manipulated the alien tech like she was defusing a bomb. "Nothing screams superiority like confusing the hell out of your enemies. Speaking of which," Lysander said, watching as their trajectory brought them ever closer to the hyperspace rift. "We're about to make the jump. Jace, I don't suppose you've got any good news about our cloaking system." Jace shrugged, a decidedly what-can-you-do expression on his face. "It's like asking a politician for honesty, Captain." "You can hope, but don't hold your breath. I love your optimism, truly I do," Lysander said, dry as a desert. Just keep us from turning into space dust, will you? Doing my best, Jace replied, pushing himself upright and punching a few buttons with the air of someone who knew all too well that his best might not be enough. The ship shuddered once more, a protest against the unnatural forces they were about to unleash. Lysander took a deep breath, as if trying to inhale a sense of calm from the recycled air. All right, people, this is it. We destabilize the rift, we cut off the Xel'Naga's temporal tech, or we blow up. Either way, we won't be around to care. Think of it this way, Kayla said, her voice laced with gallows humor as she executed the final sequence. If it doesn't work, we'll have front row seats to our own demise. The ship lurched, and the view of the rift seemed to expand, a swirling maelstrom of stars and potential obliteration. Kayla's fingers flew over the console, executing the commands that would either save them or doom them to a particularly flashy end. And then, everything went to hell. A sudden jolt threw them all against their harnesses as alarms blared like the universe's worst wake-up call. Kayla's screen flashed with a new set of data that made her curse under her breath, a litany of frustration peppered with the kind of language that'd make a pirate blush. What's happening? Lysander demanded, struggling to keep the ship under control as the rift seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Looks like they've got a backup system, Kayla shouted over the din, her voice competing with the alarms. I can shut it down, but it'll take time, and I might have to do it manually. Jace repeated, his eyebrows arching with disbelief. As in, running into the jaws of death manually. Got any better ideas? Kayla shot back, already unbuckling her harness with the kind of reckless determination that bordered on suicidal. None that wouldn't involve a miracle or a winning lottery ticket, Jace admitted, his usual humor tinged with concern. Lysander swore under his breath, a string of curses that would have made a sailor proud. All right, Kayla, go. But if this doesn't work, I'm holding you personally responsible for my afterlife accommodations. I'll make sure they're suitably bleak, Kayla promised, flashing him a wicked grin before she darted out of the cockpit, sprinting for the airlock like a woman possessed. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Kayla plunged into the alien facility, her movements smooth and purposeful. Lysander watched her go, a knot of worry in his gut that refused to loosen. Think she'll pull it off? Jace asked, eyes flicking between the readouts and the view outside. She's got more guts than brains, so yeah, I'd give her decent odds, Lysander replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the suffocating tension. Let's just hope the Xel'Naga are as overconfident as they seem. Minutes ticked by, each one a lifetime as the ship groaned under the strain of staying close to the rift without being swallowed whole. Lysander and Jace worked frantically, keeping systems online and praying Kayla's gamble would pay off. The comm crackled to life, and Kayla's voice came through, breathless but determined. I'm at the control center. Starting the shutdown sequence now. Make it quick, Kayla. We're not exactly sitting pretty here, Lysander urged, glancing at Jace, whose hands danced over the controls with the finesse of someone accustomed to playing poker with fate. Yeah. Keep your shirt on, Kayla replied, her voice strained but laced with her trademark sarcasm. Almost there, another alarm blared, and this time it was Jace who cursed, his eyes wide with alarm. Captain, we've got incoming. Xel'Naga ships, about to make our lives very interesting. Define interesting, Lysander said, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be pleasant. Think pinata at a firing range, Jace replied, fingers flying over the console as he tried to coax every ounce of speed from the beleaguered engines. Great, Lysander muttered. Kayla, how's that shutdown coming? I've got a bit of a situation here, Kayla said, her voice suddenly tense. Through the comm, Lysander could hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps closing in, the kind of heavy, purposeful tread that screamed bad news. Kayla, Lysander said, his voice sharp, tension ratcheting up to unbearable levels. Just a welcoming committee, she replied, a note of forced casualness in her tone. I'm going to buy you some time. Get the ship ready to bolt. Kayla, don't Lysander started, but the line went dead, leaving him with a cold, empty feeling that settled deep in his bones. She'll be all right, Jace said, though he didn't sound convinced. She has to be. Yeah, Lysander said, gripping the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. She'd better be. Time stretched and the ship groaned under the strain, the rift looming ever closer as they clung to the edge of sanity. The alarms were a constant, screaming reminder of their precarious situation. Then, without warning, the rift shuddered, the swirling energies flickering like a dying bulb. Lysander watched, heart in his throat, as the rift wavered, destabilizing in a sudden burst of light. Kayla did it, Jace breathed, awe and relief mingling in his voice. The system's down. Then let's get the hell out of here, Lysander said, punching the throttle and sending the Advent Horizon hurtling away from the rift, the engine straining but obedient. They sped away, leaving the chaos behind, the rift collapsing in on itself with a final, explosive display. Lysander spared a moment to hope the Xel'Naga would have a hell of a time recovering from that. But as they sped away, a gnawing worry lingered at the back of his mind, a worry named Kayla Thorne. Jace, Lysander said, his voice low and tense, prep the med bay, and get ready for a rescue mission. Jace nodded, already moving to comply, his usual humor replaced by grim resolve. Let's hope she held on long enough for us to get her back. The Advent Horizon raced through the stars, a battered, beleaguered ship carrying a crew that refused to give in. As Lysander stared out at the endless expanse, he clung to one thought. They'd made it this far. They'd damn well make it a little farther, and with any luck, Kayla would be right there with them. The Advent Horizon hurtled through the cosmos like a drunk at last call, each shuddering motion a stark reminder of its piecemeal condition. As Lysander Saul adjusted the controls with the delicate touch of a man trying to defuse a bomb with a toothpick, Jace Harper leaned over to him, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Think we've got enough duct tape to hold this bucket together?" Jace asked, his voice a lazy drawl that belied the tension simmering in the air. The ship creaked ominously as if offended by the suggestion. Lysander shot him a sidelong glance. "We might have to start cannibalizing your quarters, Harper. Hope you don't mind sleeping next to the reactor." "Cozy," Jace replied, unfazed. "I hear radiation's the latest trend in skin treatments." The med bay was a flurry of flashing lights and ominous readouts, each one more depressing than the last. Lysander's thoughts kept drifting back to Kayla, lost in that damned alien facility, doing God knows what with God knows who. Or what? The kind of place where the plumbing probably included a tentacle or two. "She's got a knack for getting in over her head," Jace said, almost like he could read Lysander's mind. Or maybe it was just that obvious. "That's what makes her fun at parties," Lysander shot back, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "And a nightmare everywhere else." The holographic comm screen flickered to life, static dancing across it like a disco ball with epilepsy. Lysander tapped it because, in the absence of better ideas, it was the universal fix for electronics everywhere. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered, giving it a final, decisive thwack. The screen settled and Jace let out a low whistle as a readout of the alien facility's layout appeared. "Looks like Kayla's still kicking, or at least her gear is." "Good enough for me," Lysander said, straightening up. "Time to go get our girl." "Thought you'd never ask," Jace replied, already heading for the airlock. His usual cocky demeanor gave way to a more serious air, one that spoke of countless battles fought and lost, and some, just maybe, won. The Advent Horizon swooped toward the alien facility, a sprawling mass of architecture that seemed determined to give any visitors the architectural equivalent of a migraine. Lysander could almost hear the Xel'Naga laughing at their own joke as he steeled himself for what was to come. "Ready?" he asked, more for formality than anything else. Jace nodded, a grim smile on his lips. "Ready as I'll ever be to dance with the devil." They slipped through the airlock with the ease of seasoned professionals who'd had enough close shaves to last a lifetime. The corridors of the facility were a maze of dark metal and shadows, lit by the occasional flicker of alien tech that seemed to be taunting them with its incomprehensibility. "I swear, if we survive this, I'm investing in a GPS," Jace said, peering down yet another identical hallway. "Assuming we get our hands on a map that doesn't require a PhD in ridiculousness," Lysander replied, peering around a corner like a kid cheating at hide and seek. They moved through the facility, their footsteps echoing ominously in the silence. As they rounded a bend, Lysander spotted a flicker of movement, a trio of Xel'Naga soldiers, clad in their garish armor that looked like a unicorn had exploded on a gladiator. "Company," Jace whispered, drawing his weapon. "Think we can talk our way out of this one?" "Sure, if they speak sarcasm," Lysander muttered, raising his own blaster. But I doubt it. The ensuing firefight was a chaotic blur of energy blasts and shouted curses, neither side inclined to yield an inch. Lysander and Jace moved with the practiced ease of partners who'd danced this lethal ballet countless times, ducking and weaving through the onslaught. Finally, as the last Xel'Naga fell, the facility rang with an uneasy silence, one that suggested more trouble was just around the corner. "Well, that was invigorating," Jace said, his voice breathless but laced with his usual irreverence. "Like a Zumba class with less dignity." Lysander chuckled, though it was more bark than laugh. "Let's hope Kayla's having an easier time of it." They pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with determination born of sheer stubbornness. As they neared the facility's core, the air grew thick with the hum of alien machinery, a low thrum that vibrated through the walls like a badly tuned bass guitar. "I hate this place," Jace said, in the tone of a man who'd once said the same thing about his ex's mother-in-law. "I hate it almost as much as I hate the dentist." Lysander nodded, keeping his eyes peeled for any sign of Kayla or more Xel'Naga hospitality. "We find her, blow this place to smithereens, and then I'm buying us all drinks. Many, many drinks." "Now you're speaking my language," Jace grinned. They finally stumbled upon a chamber that looked like the epicenter of the facility's operations, a control hub brimming with flashing panels and alien symbols that seemed spitefully complex. And there in the center was Kayla Thorne herself, frantically typing on a console with the manic energy of a caffeine-fueled coder on deadline. "Kayla," Lysander called, relief flooding his voice like the first cold drink on a scorching day. Kayla didn't look up, her fingers flying over the keys. "About time you showed up, Captain. I've been holding down the fort, but I think it's time we vacate before the Xel'Naga roll out the welcome carpet." "Don't need to tell me twice," Lysander said, moving to cover her as she worked. "How's our exit strategy looking?" "I've triggered a chain reaction in their systems," Kayla explained, her voice tight with concentration. "Once it goes, this place will be a fireworks show." "We need to hoof it pronto." "Music to my ears," Jace chimed in, keeping watch on the entrance. The facility shook as Kayla's handiwork took effect, the walls groaning with the strain of imminent collapse. Alarms blared, a cacophony of warning klaxons that seemed to scream, "Leave now, fools." The trio bolted, racing through the corridors as the facility began to unravel. Behind them, the hum of machinery turned into a roar, the air crackling with unleashed energy. As they neared the exit, Lysander could feel the heat of the collapsing structure nipping at their heels, a reminder that their timing left no room for error. "Remind me to never do this again," Kayla panted, her face a mask of determination. "Only if you remind me not to listen to you the next time you say I've got a plan," Lysander shot back, though there was a hint of affection in his voice. Bursting through the airlock, they piled into the Advent horizon, Jace slamming the controls with the gusto of a man with a newfound appreciation for his life expectancy. The ship lurched forward, its engines groaning under the demand but responding nonetheless. They sped away from the collapsing facility, the view behind them a symphony of destruction as the Xel'Naga's stronghold imploded in on itself. "Now that's a sight for sore eyes," Jace said, his voice a mix of awe and exhaustion. Kayla slumped into a seat, wiping sweat from her brow with a shaky hand. If I never see another alien doomsday device, it'll be too soon. Here's to hoping the Xel'Naga take a hint and stay out of our neck of the universe, Lysander replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. The Advent horizon soared through the stars, leaving behind the remnants of a battle hard won through sheer human stubbornness and the kind of reckless courage that bordered on idiocy. As the ship settled into a more sedate pace, Lysander turned to Kayla, his expression one of grudging admiration. "Nice work back there, Thorn. Remind me to never underestimate your ability to overcomplicate a simple plan." Kayla chuckled, the sound laced with relief. "And remind me to never underestimate your ability to turn a simple rescue into a full-blown adventure." "Team effort," Jace said, stretching his arms over his head with the satisfaction of someone who'd just completed a particularly grueling workout. Lysander nodded, leaning back in his chair as the adrenaline ebbed away. "All right, crew, let's head home. And this time, let's try not to blow anything up along the way." "Where's the fun in that?" Kayla quipped, but the smile on her face was genuine. And as they cruised through the vast expanse of space, battered but unbroken, the crew of the Advent Horizon dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd earned a bit of peace. At least until the next time the universe decided to throw a curveball their way. The Advent Horizon drifted through the black, an old warrior limping away from one more battle. Inside, the air was thick with post-adrenaline fatigue, the sort that left you feeling both invincible and ready to pass out after a marathon of close calls. Lysander Saul, captain by necessity rather than choice, sat at the controls with the weariness of a man who'd spent a lifetime dancing on the edge of oblivion. "Well, we didn't die," Jace Harper said, leaning back in his chair with the nonchalance of someone who'd just dodged death for the umpteenth time. "Always a nice way to end an adventure, right?" "Assuming we don't blow up on re-entry," Kayla Thorne mumbled from her console, where she was poking at the ship's systems like a scientist prodding a particularly stubborn specimen. Her fingers danced over the keys, a blur of movement as she coaxed the relic of a ship into behaving. "If we blow up, I'm haunting the lot of you," Lysander said, his eyes on the view screen, watching the stars slide past like a cosmic slideshow. "I'll be the ghost of questionable decisions." Jace chuckled. "Wouldn't be much of a change. You're already haunting us with your taste in music." "Hey, 1980s synthwave is a classic," Lysander shot back. "Besides, it's the only thing our ancient sound system can handle without crashing more spectacularly than Jace's love life." Kayla snorted, the sound equal parts amusement and exhaustion. "Speaking of questionable decisions, remind me why we thought it was a good idea to take on an entire alien facility with just the three of us." "Because we're idiots," Jace replied with a grin. "Idiots with a tendency for heroics and a pathological inability to back down from a fight. And because someone had to save your sorry ass," Lysander added, giving Kayla a sidelong glance. "Otherwise, who else would decipher all those Xel'Naga hate notes?" Kayla rolled her eyes, but her smile was genuine. "I'll have you know those hate notes are actually complex algorithms designed to, yeah, decode the mysteries of the universe, save mankind and all that jazz," Jace interrupted. "Still hate notes, though. Speaking of which," Lysander cut in, adjusting the ship's course with a flick of his wrist. "What do we do now? We can't exactly keep swatting at the Xel'Naga like they're mosquitoes. One of these days we'll run out of luck." "And thruster fuel," Jace added, glancing at the fuel gauge that was dipping dangerously close to the red zone. Details, Lysander sighed. "We need a plan. Preferably one that doesn't involve us getting vaporized. How about we head back to Earth and let someone else deal with the impending doom?" Kayla suggested, her tone as dry as a Martian summer. "We're not exactly equipped to hold the line against an entire alien race hell-bent on erasing us from existence. Sure, let the bureaucrats and their committee-driven strategists take a stab at it," Jace said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm sure meetings and PowerPoints will be more effective than our running and gunning. Lysander rubbed a hand over his face, the stubble scratching against his palm. Much as I hate to admit it, Kayla's right. We need to get back and warn Earth. Let them know the Xel'Naga aren't just a bedtime story to scare kids. And then what? Kayla asked, her eyes locking onto his. What's stopping the Xel'Naga from just erasing us anyway? Nothing, Lysander said, meeting her gaze. But at least we'll have tried. Besides, if there's anything humans are good at, it's being stubborn bastards, Jace snorted. Understatement of the century. Hey, if we can't outthink them, we'll out-annoy them, Lysander said with a grin. Just keep poking the bear until it gives up in frustration. Or eats us, Kayla pointed out. Not exactly a foolproof plan. Nothing we do is foolproof, Lysander replied, settling back in his chair. We're not fools, we're just incredibly stubborn. The ship's comms crackled to life, a burst of static that was quickly followed by a garbled message from Earth Control, sounding like a dying robot trying to sing opera. Lysander gave the console a healthy thump, because when all else fails, abuse the technology until it cooperates. Advent Horizon, this is Earth Control, the message finally stabilized. We received your transmission. Proceed to Docking Bay 42 for debriefing and medical evaluation. And for God's sake, don't touch anything important. Home sweet home, Jace muttered, stretching his arms as if preparing for a nap. Can't wait to see what kind of welcome we're going to get. Probably a lot of paperwork, Kayla said, her fingers stilling on the console as she turned to face the others. Assuming they don't lock us up for endangering the mission or some other bureaucratic nonsense. Let them try, Lysander said, his voice firm. After what we've been through, a prison cell would feel like a vacation. The ship slipped into the planet's atmosphere with a shudder that was more dramatic than necessary, the hull rattling as if protesting the idea of returning to gravity's loving embrace. Lysander kept a steady hand on the controls, guiding the Advent Horizon down with the precision of someone who'd made this descent more times than he cared to count. As they approached the designated docking bay, the ship's systems whined in protest, the aging hardware groaning like an old man with arthritis. Kayla's fingers resumed their dance over the console, soothing the ship's temperamental AI like a mother calming a fussy child. Easy, girl, she murmured, coaxing the ship into a graceful landing that belied its patchwork exterior. The docking bay doors loomed ahead, a gaping maw that led to the labyrinth of Earth's spaceport facilities. Lysander guided the ship into position, the docking clamps engaging with a metallic clunk that echoed through the hull. Well, here we are, Jace said, unbuckling his harness and standing with the grace of a cat that had spent too long in one place. Back where it all started. Let's hope it doesn't end here, Kayla replied, her voice tinged with both hope and apprehension. As they disembarked, leaving the Advent Horizon to its well-deserved rest, Lysander couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The universe was a vast, unfathomable place, full of wonders and terrors that defied comprehension. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. They made their way through the spaceport's sterile corridors, the air thick with the sterile scent of recycled oxygen and bureaucratic indifference. Earth Control had rolled out the metaphorical red carpet in the form of a beleaguered-looking officer who seemed as thrilled to see them as a cat at bath time. Captain Saul, crew of the Advent Horizon, the officer greeted them with a nod that was more curt than courteous. If you'll follow me, we have a briefing room prepared. Can't wait, Lysander replied with a grin that was all teeth. I love a good debriefing almost as much as I love root canals. Right this way, the officer said, clearly immune to sarcasm or just too tired to care. The briefing room was a small, windowless box that reeked of stale coffee and desperation. A smattering of officials awaited them, faces pinched with the kind of seriousness that suggested they hadn't laughed since the last time the Earth had an ice age. Captain Saul, an official began, her voice clipped and efficient. We've reviewed your report. The situation with the Xel'Naga is concerning. That's one way to put it, Jace said, leaning back in his chair with the air of someone who'd been through this song and dance before. "We need to understand the full scope of the threat," the official continued, ignoring Jace's interruption. "And your actions at the alien facility have provided invaluable data. Good to know my near-death experience was productive," Kayla said, her voice dry as a desert. Lysander leaned forward, meeting the official's gaze with steady resolve. "Look, we're just a small crew doing what we can with what we've got. But the Xel'Naga are a problem that's not going away. We've bought some time, but without a plan, we're just delaying the inevitable." The official nodded, her expression softening slightly. "We understand. That's why we're mobilizing resources to address the threat. We need you to help us prepare." Lysander exchanged a glance with his crew, seeing the same mix of determination and weariness reflected in their eyes. "We'll do what we can, but we're just a handful of people against a cosmic threat. It's going to take a lot more than just us." "Agreed," the official said. "But your expertise and first-hand experience are invaluable. We need to know everything you encountered, every weakness you discovered." "Well, for starters, their color schemes are atrocious," Jace said, earning a few raised eyebrows and a smirk from Kayla. "And they have a tendency to monologue," Kayla added, "which, if you ask me, is their biggest weakness." The official permitted herself a small smile, the tension in the room easing ever so slightly. "Noted. We'll keep that in mind." As the meeting wore on, Lysander couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope despite the overwhelming odds. The Xel'Naga were a formidable enemy, but humanity had faced extinction before and lived to tell the tale. If there was one thing humans excelled at, it was surviving the impossible. After what felt like an eternity of strategizing and planning, they were finally released, the weight of the universe's problems momentarily lifted from their shoulders. They stepped out into the corridor, the sterile air a balm after the stifling confines of the briefing room. "Well, that was fun," Jace said, stretching as they walked. "Nothing like a good old-fashioned strategy session to remind me why I hate meetings." "At least we didn't get thrown in a cell," Kayla replied. "That's a win in my book." "Small victories," Lysander said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Now let's get some rest. Who knows what fresh hell tomorrow will bring." They made their way back to the Advent horizon, the familiar hum of the ship's systems a comforting backdrop to their weary steps. As they settled in, Lysander couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for his crew. They were more than just comrades in arms. They were family, bound by shared struggles and the kind of camaraderie that only came from facing the void together. "Hey, Lysander," Jace said from his perch in the pilot's chair. "What's next for us after all this?" Lysander leaned back, his gaze on the stars just beyond the ship's hull. "We keep fighting, we keep surviving, and maybe, just maybe, we find a way to beat the bastards at their own game." "Sounds good to me," Kayla said, her voice carrying a note of determination that was echoed in her gaze. The ship settled into its berth, the quiet ticking of cooling metal a lullaby to the crew's frayed nerves. As sleep claimed them, the universe continued its endless dance, unconcerned with the struggles of a single crew on a battered ship. But for the Advent horizon and its crew, hope was a stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. In the face of overwhelming odds, they defied the universe and lived to tell the tale. And as long as they drew breath, they'd keep fighting, keep surviving. Because in the end, that was what it meant to be human.